5 years ago, the world changed completely when people with supernatural abilities suddenly began to appear. After that, mixed martial arts was divided into 2 separate categories: the Ability User League and the Non-Ability User League. A strange young woman wants to bring the slowly dying Non-Ability League back to life. She believes that even though the league is buried under massive debt, handing over its leadership so easily to someone else would be foolish. In her opinion, people simply fail to understand the true value of mixed martial arts. According to her, whenever a sport is this underappreciated, it becomes the biggest opportunity, and if she succeeds in rebuilding the league, it could make an enormous amount of money. Meanwhile, during an MMA fight, one fighter mocks his opponent by asking if he should fight using only his left hand. The moment he hears this, the opponent charges at him in anger. But in the very next second, a single uppercut brutally knocks the man out. After that, he climbs on top of him and starts raining punches on his face without stopping. In reality, he is not just some ordinary fighter but Kwang Ho, an MMA champion with a professional record of 49 wins and only 1 loss. However, there was a reason he had been permanently banned, and it was not just because of his provocative words. His dirty fighting style and one particular incident were also responsible for it. In the girl's eyes, Kwang Ho is exactly the person she needs the most, especially now when all the league's important indicators have reached their highest point. She believes that most people around her probably have no idea what is really going on. But she can clearly see that every stunt Kwang Ho pulls is carefully planned to gain maximum publicity. He possesses a natural talent for grabbing people's attention, something no one can copy no matter how hard they try. But one thing surprises the girl even more. On one hand, Kwang Ho is incredibly brilliant, yet on the other hand, his everyday life is the complete opposite. Ever since his comeback, he has been living like a lazy sloth, spending most of his time simply scrolling through TikTok as if he doesn't care about anything in the world. Eventually, the girl's patience runs out. She reminds him that she brought him back only on the condition that he would help increase the league's ratings and keep his promise. In response, Kwang Ho picks up his phone and shows her several online articles that had recently gone viral. All of them were related to fights. The moment she sees the articles, she gets excited. An idea instantly pops into her mind. Ability user versus non-ability user. She thinks viewers will definitely enjoy this kind of content. Without wasting any time, she sets out to find an ability user. After a while, she finally finds one and approaches him to talk. But before she can even finish speaking, the ability user stops her. He explains that when someone's abilities awaken, their physical capabilities automatically increase as well. Because of that, interacting with such people can be dangerous for ordinary humans. Just then, Kwang Ho arrives and repeatedly starts provoking him. However, the ability user refuses to fall into his trap and throws both of them out. That same evening, the girl goes to meet him again. But this time, the moment she approaches him, the ability user violently shoves her to the ground. She immediately starts apologizing and tries to explain what happened earlier. But the man refuses to listen and instead moves straight toward her to attack. At the very last second, Kwang Ho arrives, pulls the girl out of the way, and saves her. Then he stands in front of the ability user himself, and what happens next leaves the girl completely stunned. Kwang Ho keeps fighting without taking even a single step back against the ability user, who has 6 arms. At one point, he even lands a direct punch on the man's face. As the fight continues, Kwang Ho methodically begins breaking his bones one by one. Eventually, the ability user has nothing left to fight with. After the fight ends, Kwang Ho casually reveals that he had been recording the entire battle on his phone from the very beginning. He explains to the girl that the more people witness an incident live, the easier it becomes to prove later that it was self-defense. Then he turns back to the live stream and starts provoking the remaining ability users one after another. Before the situation gets even worse, the girl steps in and stops him. But by then, it is already too late. Kwang Ho's provocations have spread like wildfire. Normally, such provocations would not create such a huge uproar, but this time things are different. Hearing people constantly talking about it leaves the girl deeply worried. She wonders what will happen if Kwang Ho loses to an ability user one day. In reality, this provocation is more than just a provocation. It is a clash between the superiority complex of ability users and the sense of injustice that exists inside non-ability users. One day, while sitting in the office, Kwang Ho gets bored. He wonders why not even a single ability user has come to challenge him yet. Suddenly, the girl starts laughing like a madwoman, as if a ghost has taken over her soul. Seeing her expression, Kwang Ho assumes that this time she must have brought some good news. But in the very next moment, the girl completely changes her attitude. She says that yes, she does have good news, and that good news is that Kwang Ho has once again been permanently banned. After that, She also points out that he no longer uses honorifics when speaking to her. She asks why, ever since the previous incident, he has been talking to her so casually and informally. Kwang Ho simply shrugs the matter off and says that if he is going to be kicked out no matter what in the end, then there is no point in maintaining honorifics anymore. Then, looking at the girl, he tells her that it is obvious she is panicking right now. But she needs to understand that whether she likes it or not, she is now sitting in the same boat as Kwang Ho. He also says that no matter how many times she tries to explain to people that she has nothing to do with any of this and that everything is entirely Kwang Ho's fault, no one will believe that story. People will consider both of them part of the same team, no matter what she says. Hearing this, the girl directly asks whether saving her was also part of some bigger plan Kwang Ho had designed to bring her to this very moment. Kwang Ho looks at her and says that it no longer matters whether that was the case or not. The girl explodes in anger. She says that the real problem is this provocation. If Kwang Ho loses his very first match, all the attention he is getting right now will later turn into criticism. She asks him whether he has any plan. She hopes that he does. But Kwang Ho immediately replies, "No, I don't have any plan." Suddenly, a man wearing a suit teleports into the middle of the room. He says that he is not one of those people who are afraid of Kwang Ho. Kwang Ho asks him if he wants to fight right here. But the man replies that if there is going to be a fight, it will take place in the pro arena. Then the ability user looks at Kwang Ho and says, "Try punching me in the jaw just once. Then you'll find out what happens." The moment she hears this, the girl immediately jumps in between them. She tells Kwang Ho not to fall for such an obvious provocation. She urges him to stay calm and ignore the man. Kwang Ho smiles calmly and says, "Don't worry, I won't do anything." But in the very next moment, right before everyone's eyes, Kwang Ho suddenly throws a punch straight into the man's jaw without any warning. Everyone in the room is left stunned. But the strangest part is that instead of getting angry, the man looks at Kwang Ho and says, "I like you." After that, his assistant steps forward and starts reading out all the details of the match contract. When the girl checks the contract herself, she is completely shocked. The contract conditions are far more favorable to them than she had ever expected, so favorable that she can hardly believe it. As he is leaving, the ability user breaks a section of the wall along the way, and the girl immediately insists that the repair cost of the wall should also be added to the contract and compensated. Meanwhile, the ranking system of the DK League is revealed. In this league, fighters are organized according to different colored ranks, and at the very top of this hierarchy is the black rank. It is the most elite and highest tier in the DK League. Surprisingly, this prestigious rank has only ever been awarded to 3 fighters, and one of them is Paul Rooney, whom people know by the name Terminus. He did not receive this nickname for show. Instead, it is because every fighter who has stood before him has reached their own personal terminus, their end, by the time the fight was over. After a while, the girl sinks into deep thought once again. There are now only 9 days left before the big match. She keeps thinking about the same problem over and over again. Somehow, she has to stop this match or find a legitimate reason to terminate the contract. But the moment she steps outside the building, another headache is waiting for her. A huge crowd of reporters has surrounded Kwang Ho. One reporter is almost shouting in anger. He is furious because Kwang Ho had publicly claimed that he was not training, yet footage of his training keeps getting leaked continuously. In other words, everything he had said turned out to be completely false. The girl immediately steps forward and scolds the reporters, asking what they are doing outside her office. At that moment, one reporter replies that everyone standing there had been personally invited by Kwang Ho for an interview. And that's not all. A broadcasting station's crew had also come there earlier in the day. 3 days pass. The girl arrives at the gym and sees Kwang Ho training with full intensity. The moment she sees him, she shouts, "Stop it!" Kwang Ho asks her if she knows that only 6 days remain before the match. The girl replies that this cannot continue anymore. She knows that Kwang Ho is using her as nothing more than a scarecrow. If the results had been good, perhaps she could have tolerated it. But now the situation has reached a point from which there is no turning back. She says she can no longer ignore his impulsive actions. Then, in anger, she reminds him that this entire match is a setup. The people on the other side are simply using them, and on top of that, their opponent is one of the DK League's most dangerous top-level fighters. After thinking for a while, she reaches a conclusion. They have to win no matter what. Whether the opponent is Paul Rooney or anyone else, Kwang Ho has to win. She turns toward him again and asks, "Tell me honestly, do you really have no plan?" She reminds him that Kwang Ho himself had said that they were on the same side and working toward the same goal. But the next answer leaves her completely speechless. Kwang Ho says, "I do have a plan." Hope returns to the girl's eyes. But in the very next moment he says, "And my plan is to lose." Hearing this, the girl is completely shocked. Kwang Ho then explains that for the past 10 days, he has been thinking about only one thing, trying from every possible angle to figure out how he could defeat Paul Rooney. He analyzed every strategy, every possibility, and every situation over and over again in his mind. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized that the man standing before him was no ordinary opponent. Kwang Ho continues by saying that if he had been given a little more time, perhaps he might have found a method that could actually work. But the girl immediately asks, "If that was the situation, then why didn't you refuse the match from the very beginning?" Kwang Ho replies calmly that even if he had rejected the match, the people on the other side would never have let him go so easily. Then he leans in very close to the girl and whispers something into her ear. For the first time, he reveals the truth about his real plan to her. After that, 6 days pass. Finally, the day everyone had been waiting for arrives. Ability user versus non-ability user. The excitement throughout the entire arena reaches its peak. There is only one question in everyone's mind. Is Kwang Ho finally going to pay the price for all of his provocations, or will he actually prove that his words were true? The moment the match begins, Kwang Ho charges at his opponent like a storm. He launches one brutal attack after another, and before long, he secures such a victory that he ends up looking exactly like the villain people always claimed he was. But after the victory, the situation suddenly changes. Music. The entire audience turns against him. People from all around start hurling insults at him. Some even begin throwing whatever they have in their hands into the ring. Just then, the referee steps in and says that Kwang Ho has committed a foul and there will be consequences for it. But Kwang Ho immediately fires back, "If it's a foul, then disqualify me. End the match right here." At that very moment, several bouncers rush into the ring and pin him to the ground. Even then, Kwang Ho keeps shouting that the match should be ended immediately. But then, Paul Rooney gets back on his feet. He clearly states that what happened will not be considered a foul. It will simply be treated as an accident, and the match will continue. In reality, the DK League does have fouls. Eye gouging, soccer kicks, and stomping are all against the rules. And deliberately committing a foul to get disqualified damages a fighter's reputation just as much as becoming a villain in the eyes of the public. However, if handled the right way, the very same controversy can also attract people's attention. But this time, Kwang Ho himself becomes confused. He had expected the match to end right there, but nothing like that happened. When he looks toward the audience, he sees that every single person in the arena is standing and cheering for Paul Rooney. Ironically, Kwang Ho's foul had only made Paul Rooney even more iconic. After that, Kwang Ho starts running around inside the octagon. The octagon has a diameter of approximately 11.5 meters, and unlike a boxing ring, it has no corners. Suddenly, Paul Rooney charges toward him while throwing a punch. But Kwang Ho dodges the attack and lands a powerful elbow strike. In the very next moment, Paul Rooney throws a counterpunch. The force behind that punch is so tremendous that Kwang Ho is sent flying into the air. Seeing this, one commentator blurts out, "It seems Kwang Ho is living under an illusion. He has forgotten that this is not an ordinary mixed martial arts match." The second commentator asks in disbelief, "Did he really come here without preparing a counter for this ability?" Meanwhile, the girl rushes over to the referee and asks why the match is continuing even after a foul. But the referee completely ignores her, as if she had never said anything at all. At that moment, the girl realizes the truth. The DK League itself decides whether a disqualification will be accepted or not. And even more importantly, the audience doesn't seem to think that anything wrong has happened either. She realizes that the entire arena had been filled with bias from the very beginning. Most of the people present today were fans of the DK League's black tier fighter, Paul Rooney, and they were never going to take Kwang Ho's side. The girl starts thinking of another option. If disqualification isn't possible, then perhaps forfeiting is the only path left. But then she remembers Kwang Ho's very first match. She recalls how he had managed to capture the attention of almost every viewer. If they surrender now, all the momentum they have built so far will disappear, and all of their dreams will come to an end right here. Suddenly, Paul Rooney does something that no one could have imagined. He casually lies down in the middle of the octagon. Then, loud enough for everyone to hear, he says, "I'm just waiting for the first round to end." The very next moment, the entire arena erupts with laughter. Everyone starts making fun of Kwang Ho. Paul Rooney looks at him with a smile and says, "If I finish this too quickly, where's the fun in that?" Finally, the first round comes to an end. The girl immediately runs over to Kwang Ho and asks if he is all right. Kwang Ho replies, "It's just a small cut. I lost a little blood, but it's nothing serious." Then Kwang Ho also explains that Paul Rooney is deliberately limiting his strength. He is using only as much power as is allowed inside the match, nothing more. Hearing this, the girl becomes serious. She quietly says that the smartest decision would be to quit the match right now. But Kwang Ho immediately refuses. I will not forfeit. The girl's anger finally erupts. She says that if this continues, all they will receive is the audience's laughter and humiliation. People will mock them, and the DK League will exploit them even more than before. She also says that she knows Kwang Ho does not want to admit his mistake, but the sooner he accepts reality, the sooner they can minimize the damage. Even so, Kwang Ho does not back down from his decision by even an inch. He looks at the thousands of people sitting inside the arena and says in a firm voice, "Every person sitting here doubts me today. But before this match ends, I will make every single one of them regret every doubt they had about me." In reality, the very first requirement for participating at any level of the DK League is that a fighter's abilities must already have awakened. That is the basic entry requirement. Only after a person's abilities manifest are they allowed to compete in the amateur league. But the journey does not end there. After that, they must win at least one match to earn a pro card, and only then can they move forward. Once a fighter receives a pro card, they earn the right to compete in the DK League's lower division, where they must continuously win matches, collect points, and climb the rankings. Music. But even after clearing all these stages, reaching the top tier is far from easy. Only those fighters who are considered the very best among elite fighters themselves ever reach this level. Meanwhile, the crowd inside the arena continues to rain abuse on Kwang Ho. People keep cursing at him, throwing things at him, and shouting, "Just give up. You've already lost. Stop embarrassing yourself." But none of it has any effect on Kwang Ho. The fight resumes. Paul Rooney charges straight toward him and attempts to land a powerful punch. But the moment the punch is thrown, something strange suddenly happens. Paul's own fingers break. Even he cannot understand what just happened, and before he has a chance to figure it out, Kwang Ho charges forward like lightning. Suddenly, a devastating high kick crashes into Paul's face. The entire arena falls silent. No one had expected that attack. A wave of shock spreads through the entire audience. Paul is still trying to regain his balance when Kwang Ho delivers another kick straight to his face. This time, the audience immediately starts shouting, "Foul! He's cheating again." But Kwang Ho puts on that same devilish smile and replies, "Oh no, it was just an accident." The moment they hear this, the crowd becomes even more enraged. Now Kwang Ho launches himself at Paul with complete brutality. His attacks are so ruthless that even the audience begins to feel uncomfortable. People in the stands start yelling, "That's enough. Stop now." But Kwang Ho simply turns toward them and raises only his little finger. His message is crystal clear. "Your opinions mean nothing to me. I couldn't care less what you think." Meanwhile, the injured Paul looks up and asks, "If you wanted to win, then why didn't you finish me earlier?" He continues, "Now it doesn't matter whether it was a foul or cheating. The victory is yours. You've already won." But suddenly, everything changes. In a single moment, all of Paul Rooney's abilities return. He immediately gets back on his feet and starts walking toward Kwang Ho. Then he reveals his true reason. He says that he did not knock Kwang Ho out earlier because he wanted to see what Kwang Ho looked like when fighting at his full strength. Hearing this, Kwang Ho bursts into laughter. He says, "You think far too highly of yourself." Then, looking straight into Paul's eyes, he replies, "And as for why I didn't finish you earlier, the reason is very simple. If I had ended everything at the beginning, the entire match would have been boring. Then where would the fun have been?" Now both fighters stand facing each other. Neither is willing to back down. According to the DK League rules, in non-championship matches, the third round is the final round. That meant one thing: whatever happened next would decide who the winner would be. For the first time, the girl loudly calls out Kwang Ho's name. Looking at him, she shouts, "Go and give it everything you've got. Don't hold anything back this time." Hearing her words, Kwang Ho is genuinely surprised. He looks at her and says, "Honestly, I thought you were going to switch back into preacher mode and start giving me another long lecture." At that moment, countless things are running through the girl's mind that she wants to say to him. But deep down, she knows that the match has reached a stage where none of those words will change anything. So she lets go of everything else and asks only one question. She shouts with all her strength, "Tell me, what is your real plan? What have you been hiding all this time?" At the same moment, Paul steps forward and extends his hand toward Kwang Ho. He says, "Strange, isn't it? We still haven't properly greeted each other. Kwang Ho looks suspiciously at the outstretched hand. Then he asks, "Why a handshake now? Don't tell me you're planning to wait until I lower my guard and then break my hand." Even so, the two of them shake hands. After that, both fighters return to their respective starting positions, and finally, the third and final round begins. Now the true secret behind Paul Rooney's ability is revealed. His power is based on vibrations. By controlling vibrations, he can send them toward his opponent. Gradually, these vibrations begin to nullify the opponent's senses, and eventually, their perception and reaction ability become almost completely ineffective. In other words, they can still see, but they can no longer properly understand or react to what they see. Meanwhile, the same man in the suit is sitting among the audience, watching the match. He thinks to himself that the fact a non-ability user has managed to hold his own so well against a DK League Black Tier fighter is nothing short of a miracle. Back in the match, Kwang Ho suddenly realizes that his sense of touch has disappeared. It feels as if his own body is no longer listening to him. He almost becomes frozen in place. Paul immediately takes the opportunity and moves in to attack. But at that very moment, Kwang Ho grabs his hand, as if his body had responded on pure instinct. In the very next second, while tightly holding Paul's hand, he starts delivering consecutive kicks to his face. But suddenly, Paul throws him up into the air. The moment Kwang Ho lands, Paul drives a devastating punch straight into his chest. Then, looking down at him, he asks, "How does it feel when your own senses betray you and you have nothing left to rely on?" Paul is surprised that Kwang Ho doesn't respond at all. So he turns toward the referee and says, "Go ahead and announce my victory. Let's end this." But then, something changes. Kwang Ho, lying on the ground, slowly begins to stand up. Suddenly, everything starts connecting in his mind. He begins to understand what had actually happened to him. Paul tells him that the very moment Kwang Ho directly experienced his ability, his senses instinctively recognized who the truly stronger person in the arena was. Because of that recognition, his own senses abandoned their weaker master. In other words, his own senses had rebelled against him. The moment he hears this, Kwang Ho suddenly charges forward. He grabs Paul's neck and tries to headbutt him. But Paul reads his intention so easily that before Kwang Ho can complete his attack, he lands a direct punch squarely on his face with a loud impact, sending Kwang Ho flying backward once again. Looking at Kwang Ho, Paul says, "It's truly unfortunate. But the moment I activated Terminus, the outcome of this fight was already decided. Everything was over before you even had the chance to understand what was happening." He then explains further that human senses such as vision, touch, and hearing are only a matter of time. Gradually, Kwang Ho's remaining senses will also stop obeying him and will fall under Paul's control. Paul even admits that he doesn't like winning this way himself. But he has no other choice because, in his opinion, he simply cannot lose to someone as weak as the person standing before him. After saying that, Paul steps forward to deliver his final attack. He wants to end everything with one last blow. But then, bang! A powerful kick suddenly crashes into his face, and at the same time, a voice is heard. "Before you can reach me, you'll have to defeat your own senses first." 3 days earlier, the girl was sitting with Kwang Ho. She reminds him that the chances of him being disqualified are already extremely high. Then she directly asks, "So what exactly are you planning to do?" In response, Kwang Ho starts talking about all sorts of random things. His conversation has no clear direction at all. He keeps jumping from one topic to another. While listening to him, a strange thought crosses the girl's mind. She begins to wonder if Kwang Ho's habit of speaking in such a scattered and random way might actually be some kind of mental training. Back in the present, the girl's eyes are wide open. Her jaw has practically dropped because right in front of her, Kwang Ho is laughing like a madman. Only one thought is running through her mind. He actually did it. He really broke Terminus. Even the commentators are completely shocked. They can hardly believe that Kwang Ho has figured out a counter to Paul Rooney's Terminus ability right in front of everyone. The second commentator offers his own theory. According to him, Kwang Ho allowed such an enormous shock to hit his head that it disrupted and broke Paul's ability, which had already been affecting his brain. Hearing this, Paul himself starts laughing. Looking at Kwang Ho, he says, "You're truly insane. No ordinary shock could ever do something like that, and no sensible person would even think of trying it." After that, Kwang Ho charges straight at Paul. He begins unleashing a non-stop barrage of punches, one after another, without stopping and without tiring. He is using his entire arsenal. Sometimes light strikes, sometimes sudden heavy attacks, sometimes changing his rhythm, and sometimes attempting submissions. Everything is so unpredictable that it becomes increasingly difficult for Paul to anticipate the next attack. By now, Kwang Ho's technique has reached a level that could almost be called superhuman. But Paul is no easy opponent either. He immediately raises both hands and forms a tight guard. Seeing this, Kwang Ho says, "There isn't much time left in the third round. So why don't we end this quickly?" Then he challenges Paul. "Lower your guard. Use terminus one more time. I'll use my most dangerous move. Let's see who lands first, and whose attack hits harder." But Kwang Ho was, after all, Kwang Ho. He never possessed the kind of ego or pride that other fighters had. And right in the middle of that conversation, while Paul is still trying to understand what he is saying, Kwang Ho suddenly attacks. His target is Paul's already injured right eye. Everything is perfectly calculated. Completely intentional. He attacks from a blind spot where Paul cannot possibly see the strike coming. At first, Kwang Ho makes it appear as though he is about to throw a high kick, and Paul prepares accordingly. But at the very last moment, Kwang Ho changes the direction of his kick, and the attack lands somewhere entirely different. It wasn't a beautiful way to fight. It was dirty. It was scrappy. But against a monster like Paul, this was the only method that could work. Kwang Ho keeps the pressure on continuously. He believes that if he keeps attacking without letting up, Paul's defense will eventually break somewhere. But at the very last second of the exchange, Paul unleashes a devastating attack. His punch is so powerful that the entire arena trembles. People immediately begin shouting, "Call the medical team! Get into the octagon quickly!" A punch to the chin like that, even if partially blocked, could be fatal. But then Paul stands in front of the medical team. He prevents them from entering the octagon, and the reason becomes clear in the very next moment. Kwang Ho is still standing. He had taken Paul's direct punch on the chin, yet he had not fallen. Only 20 seconds remain on the clock. Both fighters pour every bit of strength they have left into the battle. Neither backs down. Neither gives up. They continue fighting until the very last second, and then the match is officially declared over. But even before that announcement, both of them manage to land one final punch on each other. After the fight, while walking back, Kwang Ho says to the girl, "Let's go to the rest area. I'm really hungry. I want something to eat." The girl goes to the restroom. But when she returns and reaches the corner, the biggest shock of her life is waiting for her. There lies Kwang Ho, completely unconscious, flat on the ground. That night, the girl has to carry Kwang Ho on her back all the way to his apartment, because he still hasn't regained consciousness. By the time the girl somehow manages to carry Kwang Ho back to his apartment, she herself is completely exhausted. Carrying such a heavy man on her back the entire way has left her waist and spine feeling like they have completely given out. Meanwhile, the official result of the match is announced. The fight is officially declared over, and the final result records a decision loss for Kwang Ho. In other words, he did not win the match. But the real issue wasn't the result. The real issue was that Paul Rooney, one of the DK League's most dangerous and highest-ranked black-tier fighters, had failed to knock out an ordinary non-ability user. And that was no small matter. A result like this could create a huge problem for the league in the future because a new question had now taken root in people's minds. If even a black-tier fighter can't easily defeat a non-ability user, then are ability users really as invincible as everyone believes? In the present, the girl sits alone, lost in thought. The same question keeps repeating in her mind. Will people even come to watch the next match? Is the audience still interested? Even so, she knows there is no way to turn back anymore. No matter what happens, they have to keep moving forward. Then she finally admits a truth to herself, a truth she had been unwilling to accept until now. She realizes that from the very beginning, she never truly trusted Kwang Ho. Deep down, she had always believed that if things ever went wrong, if everything failed to go according to plan, Kwang Ho would simply leave the league. He would walk away without looking back, without taking any responsibility, and never return. But after watching today's match, her entire way of thinking has changed. She realizes that the whole time, she had been sitting safely on the sidelines. She was thinking about the outcome of the match. She was thinking about ratings. She was thinking about the future of the league. But Kwang Ho, he was standing right in the middle of the arena. He was taking every punch. He was enduring every injury. He was putting his own body on the line. And he kept fighting until the very end. This realization weighs heavily on her heart because, for the first time, she understands that the very person she never fully trusted was actually the one taking the greatest risks. While she watched everything from a safe distance, Kwang Ho stood alone in the battlefield, bearing every bit of pain himself. The weight of that realization settles deeply into her heart. Then, all of a sudden, a strange thought crosses her mind. She starts thinking that when a man truly loves a woman, he is willing to risk everything for her. And with that thought, a question arises in her mind. Does Kwang Ho like me? The next morning, the two of them order some food. As soon as it arrives, Kwang Ho digs into it as if he hasn't eaten for days. He eats so quickly that the girl can only stare at him in surprise. After they finish eating, the girl plays an interview on her phone. In the interview, a reporter is asking people on the street what they think about yesterday's match between Kwang Ho and Paul Rooney and what impression the fight left on them. But the interview doesn't start well. One after another, people come forward and speak against Kwang Ho. Some call him a loser. Some say he belongs in jail. Others openly express their hatred for him. Seeing all this, the girl immediately tries to stop the interview. But Kwang Ho stops her hand. Then the reporter shares his own opinion. He says that the public reaction doesn't seem very positive at the moment. Many people believe Kwang Ho's behavior was unnecessarily aggressive, and quite a few are genuinely angry with him. But then the reporter does something no one expected. He sets his equipment down. Then he looks directly into the camera and says, "People who have been watching combat sports for years know what kind of fighter Kwang Ho really is behind all this controversy." After that, he asks the public one simple question. Would you like to watch another match featuring Kwang Ho? And at that moment, everything changes. The people's answer is, yes. Now we're a little interested. We want to see how he'll win next time. The moment Kwang Ho and the girl hear those responses, they both jump with excitement. They almost start shouting because this was exactly the reaction they had been working toward from the very beginning. This was their goal. After that, Kwang Ho shows her an article on his phone. He tells her that they are currently the #1 trending topic across the entire platform. Then, with a smile, he says, "Show people something real and genuinely interesting just once, and its impact is greater than 100 rounds of promotion." Then he tells the girl, "You need to learn to trust a little. You have nothing to lose by following my instincts." But the girl still cannot fully believe him. She cannot understand how just one match could create such a massive impact.